background image. That's what those cool kids are doing.
Yeah, I like it. It's the you don't have to do much background. Although Wax is over there in some kind of other dimension. Is that your actual house, or is that I never can tell? Oh, you're muted. So you suck at sound.
Yeah, true that. Oh, we're live. We're live, except nobody can hear Waxa. Welcome, everyone, to our live Breakfast in Blockchain, where technical glitches are bound to happen. Waxa may have done an intro, but it was for lip readers only. And we're here with Domenic Thomas from basically, primarily, I guess. What's your primary affiliation, Domenic? You got your fingers in a bunch of pies, and we can get into all that. How would you best describe yourself in terms of like? UX Network, obviously, you're very
free. I'm a free agent. I'm a swinging dick. You know what I mean? Like I'm all over the place. You don't want to invite me to the party with the single ladies. You know what I mean? I'm that guy. No, Genix is my company. I guess it's consulting. Do a lot of work for different projects right now, so it's a lot of fun actually.
Right on.
Just testing my mic. Do I work now?
You do.
Yes.
You jumped up and tested. Good.
Brilliant. And you've done an intro.
Yeah. I think so.
Thank you.
An attempted intro. So yeah, lots of exciting events in the crypto space. It's a green candle day, so this is the right day to talk. Maybe there's some slight smiles.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see how it reacts. I mean, we covered a bit yesterday in our new show, myself and Gabriel. But I want to see if it rebounds down, and if it breaks that floor outlined yesterday, then that's not necessarily good. But we'll see how it works. It could just keep, retest and spring back up. Excellent. Just gotta wait and see.
Wait and see. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, fellas. Good to see you.
Hey.
What are we chatting about?
At the moment, we're just talking about green candles.
The best kind. Nobody likes those red candles. No, nobody's a fan of those.
I don't even like real life red candles.
No, they're a little creepy, aren't they?
Yeah.
Halloween,
exactly.
Or like Valentine's Day.
I was going to say Christmas.
Christmas too, yeah. The red
So
light.
is there any updates from anyone? Has anyone been up to anything interesting today so far?
No, I had my head down in Twitter and crypto things, so nothing adventurous. Although I am in my one of my favorite natural setting spots for the next few hours. Made it out of the apartment. I've been stuck indoors, I think, the whole week, so good to be outdoors.
Fresh air and sun. Absolutely.
So we just recorded our top 5 of the week, which will be coming out on Sunday. It's not a whole lot going on, but there are some interesting developments. We'll try not to talk about them too much, but that's reasonably interesting.
Did you guys see the mission NFT to space? Well, I guess the mission NFT is so this is Telos, but they've got the astronaut Scott Kelly minted 15 NFTs on Telos. Did you guys see those?
Pretty amazing.
No, are they on a special website or where are they located?
They've got them. I mean, I'll put the link in our chat. And let's see, I'll put it in our YouTube chat for anybody interested. This is to a Twitter from Telos. But yeah, it is on the Telos network. They were minted, I believe, through their EVM, so they're EVM compatible, I believe. And it's like an auction. Proceeds go to Ukraine, is what it says. But it's neat. Like, they're really cool photos, obviously, from space. Yeah. But he did like a little kind of narration of each one with some custom music in the background. So it's pretty cool little series. Just nice to see somebody with 5.3 million Twitter followers and an American astronaut choose Telos to to mint on, because there's obviously a lot of other options out there.
Yeah, the pictures are really good. I like the flowers one. It's like just a silhouette of flowers with space background. Look quite interesting. Totally abstract.
Yeah.
So, does anyone know the history of the astronaut? Which space flights he's been on? I haven't looked him up. Not familiar.
I don't know.
What was the name again?
Scott Kelly.
Scott Kelly. Oh, I don't feel like he's a more recent.
Recognize the name.
Might want to put it on the screen for the viewers.
Yeah, Chris, have you got
Screenshot pilot?
Yes. Let me find something to look at here. I will share.
He commanded the ISS.
He commanded the International Space Station
3 times. So it's a big deal. A year long. He spent a year up there. Oh my God. Set the record. Total accumulated number of days. That's cool.
So this is some of them. This is like apparently some spot in Australia, like lava pools.
Oh.
So let's see. How do you do it? Where can the community follow our project? ScottKellyArt.com. Space NFT drop. There's Scott Kelly. And if we space NFTs, basically through his site, ScottKellyArt.com/marketplace, you can, and these are the 15 different NFTs he's got. And then if you, so basically you can bid on them. So say I want, here's the flower ones you were talking about. Yeah. Wait, Valentine. So if I click on that bad boy, I don't know if the sound will play through, but basically it's got some narration. Does that come through at all?
Like space flowers that I harvested and then took a picture of in the cupola in February of 2016 for Valentine's Day. I was genuinely touched by how, with a little bit of help, these flowers thrived in space.
Yeah. Cute. And so you can have that bad boy currently for 732 EO or Telos. You can make a bid, and it's gonna another 23 hours before these are all up.
Yeah, I suspect they'll all sell. Pretty unique.
Well, there's only 15 of them, so I don't know if there's multiples of them or just literally 15.
I think I read somewhere that they're one of a kind. Yeah, one-offs.
Yeah, so they all have bids. Let's see what's the highest bid. This one's 1,800 for the molten lake, lava lake lamp, lake lava lamp.
I like that top right one as well. Really nice.
Compass K, aka Compass Waters in Bahamas. Yeah. Yeah, so that's cool. That's a good Telos thing.
Yeah. That'll certainly draw some attention. Did he post on his own Twitter about it as well?
He did today. I saw him tweet about it today, yeah.
Brilliant. I'll retweet it now.
I thought I saw Justin tag Elon Musk yesterday on Twitter and say, hey, I'll buy one of these for you, whatever. I thought that was pretty clever. I probably won't, amount to anything, but still it was pretty clever. It was a clever bit of marketing. Sneaky devil.
He's good, and he got a lot of people kind of commenting. Yeah, Musk, come on.
Did everyone see the tweet from, or at least the comments on Telegram from Dan that was posted about, was it 2 years ago, where he called out or predicted a downfall of Luna?
Yeah, that Dacon guy's looking real. Let a lot of egg on his face. He acted so arrogant, It's just unnecessary. Why do people do that? What's the point, right? If you're right and you believe it, do you really have to say anything? But, well, I don't know. I disagree. I think we're in good shape. We got Darren Larimer commenting, I mean, in my world, if I thought I was right, I'd be like, one, great. Got somebody in the industry who's highly respected, who's aware of my project and what I'm doing. Yeah. He has some feedback. I mean, the fact that you wouldn't just want it for critical get betterness. I never understand that, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's not like it's some scrub trolling him, you know.
No, exactly.
Just it's so weird how people do this.
I think it was, I don't know. It's like, why was Guns N' Roses in the 80s such dickheads? I mean, just make your music. Your music's awesome. But part of the shtick, part of the hype that to them was that badass, I'm going to be a dickhead to everybody type of approach. And I don't know whether, because it could just be deliberate. It could just be like, Do Kwon, I'm going to build a persona of X. So this is how I'm going to interact. And so he just is confrontational because that gets more follow. Like, it's like this idea, you got more tweets out of that. You got more likes out of that. You build up your loyal fan base even more by being a bit of a dick, right? Like there's something.
Maybe.
I don't know. It's not, I'm with you, Dominic. I'm too much of a nice guy to try to attempt to just be an asshole on purpose to drum up support. But I don't know. I think some people, I mean, it worked for GNR. I never
talking about, I mean, I like your analogy, but I think you're taking a leap. Like rockstar persona, certainly crypto leader, project leader, rockstar.
But it's the human psychology piece.
Understood.
Yeah, different industries, but human psychology is human psychology. It's pervasive across industry.
True. I mean, controversy, but again, do you really need to? He went beyond anybody who was cleverly, strategically acting a certain way, right? You can get the controversy without being a douche.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he used a blunt force object, I guess, instead of a steak knife, you know, like, okay, if you want to be like, well, Dan, you know, EOS isn't going very well.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. That could have been your controversy. You could have got some shit going on. You probably would have gotten another response out of Dan, maybe. But you know, the point is just to like be so, I don't know. I didn't read it all, but it was so dismissive and just, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't look good today, that's for sure. It's not
Dan's latest response, or at least comment on his initial prediction, was that he hates to be right. So yeah, it's not something that you want to be right over, is it?
No.
Collapsing stablecoin, but
not
unfortunately.
Well, and I mean, as someone who spent a lot of time looking at compliance, that stuff's not going to play well if Daquan ends up under investigation, right? Because that looks like gross incompetence. Like, really? You actually had a pretty heavy-duty person, qualified individual, alert you, and you did nothing, and you actually acted like an asshole? That doesn't look like a guy who had great intentions. And right, you know, intent is a big part of law. In a court case like this, if there is to be one. I don't know, you know, I haven't heard of that, but there's been talk that, you know, obviously I think you're going to have some serious terror, you know, holders pretty frustrated with everything. I would imagine that there's going to be something as an attempt, you know, but anyway, it's a weird, I think it's a weird way to go about things myself. But.
I also read somewhere that it was his second stablecoin attempt. I'm not sure if that's true because I didn't look into it too far, but second failure. It's a shame.
Besides the personality issues, even the legalities, I'm concerned that the whole of the crypto industry got taken by this idea of a algorithmic stablecoin. And we've got the threat of external regulation imposing themselves on the crypto industry. Even besides that, we should be doing some kind of a better job. People like Dan Larimer raising his voice early on should have the opportunity to some kind of, whether I know it's across chains and it's very competitive, but there must be some way to have a stronger voice within the crypto community, because it impacts on all of us and we all care. And there are a tremendous amount of intelligent people about all of these mechanisms. So have some level of open dialogue, to me, sounds sensible. And I know it's super difficult. It's like governments do that. You got the G7 and the G this one and that one, and different size groups of government bodies that get together and dialogue out whatever things they're trying to control in society. But maybe there's an opportunity for that in the crypto industry. Maybe there's consortiums or things, that groups that get together with leaders from different blockchains and actually listen to each other, share concerns, share ideas, and help protect us all in this very early stage of something wonderful that is obviously dangerous, because Terra not only, unfortunately, has lost money for a lot of people, including myself, but has a bigger contagion impact on the whole industry. All of the cryptos went down. So there you go. There's a couple of thoughts.
Well, I just real quick, and to your point, self-regulation always goes better for you if you initiate it as an industry than to wait, right? This is the worst environment to get regulated under, so to speak, right? You've got public outcry, you've got an egregious, misstep. What do regulators do here? What are they asked to do, right? They overreact usually, and they're going to go, oh yeah, we're coming to rescue our constituents, right? Remember, most regulators are politicians, often appointed, especially by politicians, which makes them political. And you don't want it. You want to invite it. And we were starting to have that relationship, for at least here in the United States, with Hester Pierce from the SEC, who was talking about, wanting to reach across. And my understanding was people were starting to do that. I'm not even sure. I mean, I know Brock's done a ton of this stuff, just advocacy, and I'm sure he's probably had conversations maybe none of us know about, but that was happening, right? Because I think, outside of all these hacks, but I suppose regulators, hell, banks are hacked all the time, and credit scoring agencies. There's been so many big hacks in the regular world, I guess, that I guess those don't get as much attention, but there hasn't been like a really egregious scam. What was that last like big Bitcoin one? Was that like BitGo, or I forget what it was? There was some like big Bitcoin Ponzi. But this was like crypto winter. BitConnect. There you go. Right. That's the last thing I remember that was of this size, right? And this far-reaching, because again, like you were saying, in that instance, Bitcoin being the big dog, when that gets sick, right, everybody gets sick with it. And a lot of people, there's good, reasoning that actually led to the crypto winter. That was a reason why we actually got into that, and it stayed so long. That was a little bit of an an anomaly, right? The market doesn't normally stay down that long, and I think we'd expect as it gets more mature, it shouldn't. So it didn't make a lot of sense, and that could happen here, right? Who knows?
Yeah, potentially.
Hopefully not. Inflation keeps happening regardless of the signaling from the Fed. Money's still getting printed. It's going to have to go somewhere. It's not just going to sit in cash.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's for sure.
So if it doesn't collapse now, it'll collapse in the near future when that bubble bursts, potentially.
And what does collapse even mean? Like, what is just price versus US dollar?
Well, to the people you're talking about, right? The people with the greenbacks, that's what matters, right? And I think we were becoming more and more attractive by the day until this point too, because we kept hearing that. Like, I was listening to Ray Dalio, like, kind of stumble on a major podcast when the guy asked him, like, well, where do you go right now? And he's like, well, you run a very diverse portfolio. And it was very like bullshit answer for a guy of his caliber who doesn't normally answer that way, right? He normally answers very sharp and very like, go here, consider this, do this, think this way. And you're just like, well, if you go back to my book, you want a diversified portfolio. It's like, okay, Ray, thanks. But everything's garbage. Where do you go?
Housing.
No, but that's crap too, right? It's overheated here for sure.
Here too, yeah.
And that speaks to the emerging markets, international markets as well. That the whole world, these top people like Ray Dalio, can't even suggest a really viable opportunity anywhere in the world. That is scary.
But he did say crypto, which I found encouraging, and was absolutely saying you should have an allocation and some diversity there. Mentioned Bitcoin, Ethereum. I'm sure I don't know how deep the guy goes. He's super smart. He's a learner and a thinker, but he was saying a little bit of that earlier. He didn't say it in direct response, but when he was talking big picture, because he believes we're in the 15th stage of this 16-step cycle. Have you guys seen this?
I haven't seen 15 or 16 steps. No.
Yeah, it's
Can you tell us what all of the steps are, please, Dominic?
Yeah. Step 1, get the cake. Swirl the dough. Turn the oven on. Put it in. Bake the cake.
And so he's saying 16 steps, and do you know what that's like a completion of, like an entire cycle that we begin again, or is he saying 16 step is a significant good level of progress, or it's pretty much catastrophic devastation for us all?
No, it was in reference to the major global currency. He said there's a sort of a cycle in major power, global power, that this has happened historically for millennia practically, and that we're nearing the end of the U.S. hegemony, and basically it'll begin again, and it starts an uptrend, but that normally it ends in war. And that's the scary part.
I think it's this one. It's 6 stages, not 16.
Oh, is it 6?
Yeah, 6 stages. Dalio makes the persuasive case. Every great country has 6 stages. It's 1, a country's birth, including new leadership. 2, government built and refined. 3, peace and prosperity. 4, great excess in spending and debt and widening of wealth and political gaps. 5, which is, we can say we're arguably maybe there or just over that. 5, very bad financial conditions and intense conflict. I don't know, are we there yet? Number 6, civil war revolution.
Well, we're in intense conflict for sure here. The United States is an untenable environment. You have to choose a side. If you don't, no one wants to talk to you because they're both pissed because you're just a traitor to the Trumps or the identity politics, and we're doomed. We have a no-win election coming up. Trump convinced an entire 60-something million people that we just had a fraudulent election. He undermined democracy. And we're seeing in the January 6th stuff that he actually orchestrated that riot as well. But we won't do anything about it because what can we do? Bring Trump in now, you martyr him, forget about it. We will have civil war here, like almost overnight. I mean, we saw what they did when he got pissed off about an election. They literally, I can't believe people don't realize this, the pinnacle of democracy. People died in our Capitol that day, died. Dudes were in offices, partying and raging and taking selfies. It was ridiculous. I mean, it was comical, kind of.
It was a spectacle.
Sure.
It wasn't an insurrection.
Well, it's not an insurrection, but it's a statement.
Yeah.
Right? It's a statement.
I'm not sure if we're at the 6 stages here. I'm not sure if we're at very bad financial conditions and intense conflict. I don't think we're there yet. This isn't that. If this is intense, no, because that's the precursor to civil war revolution. So we're not there yet. I think we're getting there though. I think his idea of widening wealth and political gaps, that's what you're speaking to. I think.
That's already the worst it's ever been in recorded history. The wealth gap.
Yeah, but it's just going to keep getting worse. I just mean it's not done yet. That stage, I don't think we've reached the next tipping point where we actually do see mass rioting across the United States, and then that leading to a true civil war. That's not the January 6th thing. That's a different ballgame. In my guess, who knows? This is Ray Dalio, right? So
I can't imagine that going to step 6 and then coming back around to step 1. Can't see that happening.
Well, I'd suggest Ray Dalio is probably projecting these things over a couple of 100 years. So even if stage 6 maybe stage 6 is a 10-year deal. So give it a few years, Chris, and we might see the emergence of a civil war.
It's only been 100 years since or just over 100 years or so since the U.S. had independence. So it really, I think it's a shorter cycle. And if you look at Neil Howe or Straussman Howe, those guys, the fourth turning, it's only a couple generations, 4 generations or whatever to get to that next. It's and that analogy, I think the best analogy is the one where, or the saying, strong men make good times make weak men make hard times, and hard times make strong men.
Right.
Right. I mean, that seems like the perfect quintessential description of the past 60-ish years. And now we're at this weak men stage. Everyone gets a trophy. Everybody's right. You can't even articulate the biology of men and women. Like, information is totally like, we're Orwellian disinformation. Like, it's just, this is the weak time. Everyone's just like, okay, sure. Okay, take my freedoms and liberties. I'm not going to fight back. No problem. You're right, government. This is the weak men time. So this is going to lead to hard times, and then maybe another generation. So my kids, right, Dominic, your kids, they'll be maybe the ones who become the strong men.
Maybe. I found it. It's actually, there's 18 individual elements to this. It breaks down past the 6.
Okay.
There's strong leadership, inventiveness, education, strong culture, good resource allocation, good competitiveness, strong income growth, strong markets and financial centers. That's the first, like the rise, the first 8. The top is 4, less productive, overextended, losing competitiveness, wealth gaps. And the decline is large debts, printing money, internal conflict, loss of reserve currency, weak leadership, civil war, revolution. So clearly before loss of reserve currency, because that hasn't happened. But I think 15's legit. I do. I think we're at a pretty extensive level of conflict here in the United States.
Yeah, it does seem quite soon, to be fair.
We're having people get shot. You know, I don't know how much of that comes across the Canadian news wire, but, you know, we got people showing up and just shooting black folks, you know, because they were a threat. It was bullshit, you know, and the guy got off and all that stuff. So, I mean, we've had a lot of that.
Yeah. Interesting to get some stats.
And we've certainly printed money, right? We increased the money supply by 50% over COVID. So, you know, 14's a no-brainer. 13 and 14, the debts and the printing money. I don't know. Have you guys ever come across or heard about or read a book called The Sovereign Individual?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nothing's ever spoken to me as directly or as accurately as that book. I'm actually modeling my entire strategy around that book, straight up.
Yeah, I think maybe you can refresh my memory a little bit, but I certainly remember the first, like even the introduction, the first bit of the book is still super relevant and poignant for today, and then it goes into a lot about the Y2K disaster, right, which is obviously historical and didn't happen in that kind of a tragic way that they were projecting at the time. So yeah, the beginning, at least the introduction, is really succinct and clear in terms of even predicting what we're going through with cryptocurrency. Right?
Predicted the rise of that. It got some things wrong, no doubt, but you know, the core premise, right, is that history is dictated by these massive macroeconomic signals, and the main element is the returns on violence and how valuable violence is. And so an example being like, you know, when you had like serfs and, you know, prior to like the emergence of nation states, there was nobody to really protect you. And so the reason why serfs didn't just sort of go off, because there was plenty of land, they didn't just go off and farm elsewhere because they would get slaughtered. Because they were literally roving, you know, knights weren't as chivalrous as everybody makes it sound. And if you had a suit of armor, that was like you were a one-man military. You almost couldn't be beaten by an entire village. And so those folks weren't chivalrous. They were entrepreneurial. They would go to these areas and say, I'll protect you, but you got to pay me and I'll stick around, or a couple of nights or whatever. And so, you know, there's a different kind of return there, but that's not an efficient one. Right. And when the return's not efficient, the society doesn't grow, I think was the secondary element. But the rise of the U.S. is the example of the returns on violence being incredibly high because of the Industrial Revolution and how valuable it was to have peace, infrastructure, and, you know, land and resources together in one place. And if you could protect all that, like the U.S. has been able to, you know, and Canada. I mean, you know, I think it's a big reason North America, or at least, you know, the U.S. and Canada have done extraordinarily well. Also easily defendable, right? You know, considering we're allies. Mm-hmm. But that's their big thing. Like, but you don't need that anymore. And the example, I say this to people all the time. I mean, would you rather be in the position to steer the United States military, or would you take the top 1,000 global hackers as your army? Mm-hmm. And I say the hackers because I'll use your nuclear weapons against you. I'll end your power grid. You know, I'll put your society in such chaos, you can't do shit to me. Never mind how you're going to kill 1,000 of us when we're distributed all over the world. You know, we're not going to sit in one building. So, I mean, that's the sovereign individual. It's that idea that, like, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, right? Bill Gates, you know, we're seeing this emergence of people who are more powerful than most nation states. And it's not just because of their money. It's their transnationalism and these other elements, right? You know, they haven't paid taxes in, 20 years now because of offshore and all this stuff that they can get away with that, you know, we can't. And the big element in the book is about taxes, in that what you get in a nation states like ours is big promises, because the returns on violence were so good, people were willing to pay really high taxes. They didn't care because they were making so much money. It doesn't matter. That's the premise, like through the 50s, 60s, 70s. And then in the 80s, it starts to get a little egregious. You know, the returns are not quite as good. There's some different changes in technology, and that's what they get into. But then eventually the problem being is that you don't need that anymore, right? How do you guys all make money? Do you need to be in a physical location anymore? Not really. You do it probably for social reasons, maybe some others. You know, I don't know everybody's businesses, but I know we all make our money online remotely, right? So all we need is an internet connection. Yeah, we need to be in a stable space, but we don't need to be in the U.S. You know, I mean, any country that doesn't have, you know, riots in the streets would suffice, and a good internet connection. A lot of candidates there. So do you really want to sit around now and pay, if you do extremely well, 30, 40% taxes on your wealth? It's a lot of money. I mean, talk about the compounding, you know, elements. I mean, paying $30,000 a year in taxes over 30 years, if you could not pay that, makes you worth something like $30 million. Or, I mean, it's ridiculous, right? On an 8%, I think, annualized return or something the guy was using, like the S&P 500, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so I think about that all the time. Like, I have some big bets on projects. You know, when UX does what I think it's going to do, I don't want to pay tax. I don't want to pay 30%. Would I pay like the 10 to 15 kind of cap gains thing? Probably, you know. But if I'm in a situation where, say, Biden in the second half of his term, like, really cranks up the taxes to try to offset the COVID shit or whatever, I'm not paying 40 or 50% of my money. That's definitely enough for me to move. Panama's looking great, you know.
Get your golden visa.
Yep. You know, and that's what they're talking about too, like getting multiple passports and citizenships. You know, like how valuable that'll be, because you can move if the winds change, you can easily move your assets. And that's the other thing, right? We don't need protection because we don't have to guard our assets anymore, because they're on a hard drive, or if you can pull it off, memorized in your skull. So sure, you have to watch your person, but the average person on the street doesn't know you're worth anything unless you're driving around in a Lambo, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like, again, in the Middle Ages where your food and your house were your possessions. You had to guard them and protect them, or somebody could take them and destroy them. We don't care. We don't need banks, right? We don't even need the infrastructure anymore. So when you think about it, what are you paying for? Right? What's it all worth? I mean,
are you familiar, Domenic, with the economist Martin Armstrong?
Martin Armstrong. I feel like I've seen that name, but it just sounds common.
Yeah,
no, I'm not.
The name's been around probably since the 80s or something. He used to run very, very large hedge funds, and he still consults and does work for governments and institutions around the world, and he's kind of a bit quirky and various ideas, but I trust him probably more than I trust other so-called economists. And his theory, his idea is that there's a cycle, which I believe Ray Dalio would align with in general, and certainly the Chinese, or the Southeast Asian perspective, Japanese, I think also, that things happen in cycles. And we don't seem to have that mentality in the US. It's either everything's going to be wonderful or everything's, going to be destroyed. But Martin Armstrong sees that the financial capital of the world is likely to be moving over to China. And he gives an actual year on it. He says around 2032, we should see very clearly that the US has lost its financial capital status, and with China being it. China looks like it's got to go through its own political transformations to be able to get there. But that's his view and stance. I follow a lot of what he blogs about quite regularly. And it does create that uncertainty for us in the West and all of these changes. I do think that moving remote is very sensible. It sounds like you're referring to what I know as the 5 flags theory, where you have kind of you have a flag in a number of different countries, one being your citizenship, another being your legal residence, and then you've got others that might be where you've got your company jurisdiction, your company incorporated, and then others where you go to live and play, right? So you're moving around. To me, this is kind of a line, probably referred to the days of the sovereign individual, the book that you mentioned. Now it seems so practical and again so relevant, and also so important to be able to dodge the calamities that seem to be rolling into view even this year.
I see too in that one of the things that's so troubling to me, because I think we all know, and Dalio is a big proponent of this. He says you have to strive for equal opportunity, right? You don't strive for equal income. We know that the Pareto and but 80-20 is fine, but it can't be 80-20 opportunity, because first of all, incredibly talented people emerge from all strata of society at all times and all demographics, and we know that, right? My big thing early on with the Werbly project and the whole idea of the unbanked was, we have 2 billion people, give or take, who we don't know what they're capable of economically. We just don't know. They can't participate with us. They're still trading locally in hyper local economies, right? How do we know? They can't get on YouTube and make any money because they can't get a PayPal account, right? Or whatever, some sort of online payment. So we don't know the art, the industriousness, the innovation. There's 2 billion people. I mean, there's some Mozarts in there, folks. There's Einsteins, there's brilliance, and we're never going to get to experience that outside of the probably 20 or 30 people in that individual's life. And so an easy and really kind of uncontroversial cure potentially for our current situation is to get these folks in the system, right? It could help balance out, because they're very likely going to immediately have an economic impact, right? Because it's like zero to us, to the global economy. So who knows what emerges? It's a big reason also why countries like China are able to go to Africa, which is a specific area, there's a large unbanked population, and take over. Because you kind of say, come on, by this point, how many people have gone to Africa for the last 200 years and basically stolen resources, right? And worked the local people to death. Why aren't they doing it themselves? This is why. It's not easy to set up a global commodities corporation in a country where you don't even have banks you can rely on, right? And let's face it, there's a lot of prejudice. no matter how astute you are as a business person in Africa, showing up in New York at Chase Manhattan probably doesn't get you a top tier bank account unless you already have a lot of money, right? So you can't get, we take these things for granted in the West. You know, I had a savings account at 14 for my paper route, you know, like it was no problem. You walked in and just signed a couple papers and I was done. So, and that matters though. A bank account means a lot more than money, saving money or saving your money or making payments. It's debt, right? It's debt lending for growing businesses. It's mortgages for homes. It's, you know, there's a lot that goes on. And I mean, our banks have crossed over into investment banking and all that shit, which is probably not great. But anyway, I mean, that's a very big one that can make a big difference. But in all of this, what I get concerned about is the continued rising inequality and the fact that their hypothesis in the sovereign individual, and I've thought this for a long time, is great. You got this gig economy and all this opportunity, and the four of us can, you know, work with people all over the world. You know, my first startup, I had a global team that was across like 9 countries, right? I could pick and choose and get people from all over. That would be so hard, even 10 years ago. But that helps the people who are very educated, very talented, right? They scoop up all the good jobs, right? They scoop up all the good people, you know, and what you're going to likely see is even fewer people doing extremely well, right? And I don't, you know, never mind that. How is a global freelance workforce going to advocate for itself? I mean, labor unions and workers, you know, rights are not pretty weakened right now as it is. But in that environment, forget about it. It's just going to be a dogfight to the bottom on a lot of professional services like we see. So I felt for a while that, you know, we need to do something. We need to reinvent the union with Web3 and decentralized technologies, because we have to, you know, we're going to have to put in some sort of protections before this gets totally out of hand.
Joshua's left the call here, but he and I have been trying to explore ideas for DAO governance a little bit more carefully. And what's come out of a couple of conversations, I spoke with Just of a project called Nesta just yesterday, and he highlighted to me that a lot of the DAOs are focused on treasury governance, treasury management, but it kind of another project that is in the incubator program is writing an article at the moment on DAOs, Frios, and he describes something of a plutocracy where the people who hold the wealth, such as in a DAO treasury system, get to control pretty much the operating management of the DAO. And so the idea there that we're trying to explore, Josh and I, is how do you operationalize DAO governance and incentivize more people and allow more people to participate in the governance of the systems without them necessarily being the biggest token holders in the system. So the idea of one token, one vote comes up. But it's taking those concepts that we're struggling to figure out in our blockchain ecosystem and driving that, creating that opportunity, as you're, I think, alluding to, Domenic, in terms of places, emerging markets around the world where they still don't even have bank accounts or financial services. Well, they can, if they have a smartphone, they can create crypto wallets. They can participate in some level of DAO governance systems that have incentives with tokenomics that are bringing people and giving people those opportunities. It's I'm optimistic. I'm very pessimistic. I'm very jaded. I'm very cynical, very skeptical about many things. But at the same time, on balance, I am actually very optimistic that maybe going back to the original point, Ray Dalio, these 16 or 18 or 6 or whatever, how many steps, if the end of it is collapse of of a republic or an establishment control system, collapse of the currency, start of civil war. One of I know I'm going off in a few directions here, but one of Martin Armstrong's points is that although cycles exist, the amplitude of the wave can be different.
Yeah.
So even though we might have civil war, the amplitude of that civil war could be larger or smaller depending on what we actually do about it, right? So maybe that conflict doesn't have to manifest in outright bloodshed in the streets.
Sure.
Even the days of, like, was it Alcibiades of Greece and the Peloponnesian Wars and these kind of things. Fathers were killing sons, sons were killing fathers. That was a very large amplitude of a civil war wave. Maybe we can do much, much better. And while central banks are dying and the current establishment is dying, we have a chance to introduce systems that are better, that do include more people, that include that diversity, that create more equal opportunity. Depending on people's stage of development, professional experience does count for a lot, in my opinion. It's not just the case of someone going to Chase Manhattan Bank and asking for money just because they're white. In my opinion, I don't know if I'm going to get flamed for this, but it's very much dependent on their experience, their professional experience as well. Yes, more certain types of gender or people or status or age or whatever have easier access to professional opportunity. But if we can drive those kind of opportunities at the stage of experience that different people are at within emerging markets, around different areas, industries, etc., then maybe we can reduce the painful amplitude of the wave as we transition from the last gasps of this establishment civilization into something different and better over the next, hopefully, 10 years, as Martin Armstrong is suggesting, that yes, China may be the financial capital of the world, but it doesn't mean that it has to be a communist totalitarian state. It can actually be a collapse in confidence of centralized systems of governance over to something, even he is optimistic and projecting, it could be distributed, decentralized, more equitable and fair and better for everyone.
Yeah, I think that a return to localization makes sense for everyone in many ways, because it doesn't mean isolation necessarily. It just means that government as an entity, as an idea, the bigger it gets, the harder it is to keep things like corruption at bay, excess. It gets inefficient, right, by the very nature of it. And so, if you can keep it small, all social science theory points to, groups of hundreds and thousands are far easier to manage, have a far better chance of flourishing than hundreds of millions and billions, right? And it's really, that's a much more challenging situation to have sort of one government. I'm looking at that, but I share your view almost exactly, right? The sort of the first part of the pessimism and a lot of that stuff, but that optimism is this to me, this space, these conversations, and what the other side can look like, and I hope that, I'm 47, so I hope I can make it to at least see, one or two on that list emerge. And as Chris was suggesting, hopefully that's happening. I have 16-year-old and 14-year-old boys, 2 sons. So hopefully that's happening when they're in their 30s, right? And they might be able to hit it in the midst of their careers and really do well and with the rest of their cohort. But I believe it's funny because at the beginning of EOS, if you guys recall, there was talk early on before the chain launched of EOS becoming almost its own virtual nation state, right? It was sort of like the height of our hubris, right? I think that's doable. I really do, like very doable and probable. I could see a group like of us and a professional network getting together and saying, look, let's get together and let's establish our own sovereignty. And it's not as hard to do as you would think, because the rules are pretty much, if you can get at least one other nation state to recognize you, you're kind of, you're kind of in the clear, to make your own rules. And especially if you can own the property that you're living on. Property rights in most places go pretty far and wide. So it's just interesting what you might be able to do. And certainly if you can, if you're willing to do it in a sort of unincorporated land, of which that does still exist in the world in certain areas, it's not very desirable. But I've looked at maps that suggest global warming might actually open up a few of these places, specifically those in the Arctic, and those areas might become livable. And Alaska is, I think, because they say that Alaska is going to benefit the most, northern Canada, Alaska, and Russia. And that could be a really problematic if Russia continues its sort of pattern of aggression, that they very well are poised to become the true global superpower of the next 100 to 200 years because of all the resources in Siberia and what that might look like. So that's a woe. But again, you start thinking all that property up there. So in the U.S., you can still go to Alaska and lay claims in certain parts of the interior. Like there's still like homesteading.
Wow.
As long as you're willing to improve it and stick around for, I think, 5 years, you can, so I'm like, let's go, guys. Right. Let's get about 150 people or so. It sounds like that's usually a good number, get some equipment and some tools and chill out. And within 10 years, we should have some really good farmland. And, but I love that stuff. I just think it's fascinating,
We're gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see if we end up getting global warming before cooling, or a mini ice age before the global warming. So if you got to Alaska, Domenic, and I'm heading down into Mexico,
okay,
and or Panama. I think you mentioned Panama. I'm actually legal resident of Panama. I achieved that status last year. That was a good goal.
You did.
Yeah.
Man, you're a really interesting cat. I don't know how I didn't meet you earlier in this whole crazy world.
I haven't really been around in the EOS ecosystem.
Man,
but
I want to be your friend. You got it right.
We are. So, so if I'm setting up in Panama, Mexico, expecting, and you're up there in Alaska, depends what way the wind blows, and if we get cooling or warming. Either I'm going to be coming up to join forces with you, or you're going to have to move down to join forces with me. But I think it could go either way in terms of warming or cooling at this point.
Well, the other element to this whole idea of forming your own sovereign state is you don't necessarily have to live there either. We could plant, like you were talking about with the sort of 5 passports idea. In doing this, we could set our sovereign state at place X, but live in, say, Panama, for example. And why would you do that? Well, because we could mostly live under that set of rules that we set for ourselves in the sovereign state. Still, of course, have to adhere to whatever the rules are of Panama, but you live there more as a guest, as a vacationer. And you have to leave, however, visas vary, but so you could kind of digital nomad it a little bit. But home base could be there. And my question is, what if we do it in international waters? I mean,
I was right there with you. Yeah,
that's a theory that I think about in my mind. Like, what if we went water world with that shit? Put a bunch of barges out in some area that's not, too stormy or wavy. And, and again, we don't have to live there necessarily.
Well, as long as we've got more than just the tomato plants, then it could be great. But I remember that scene in Waterworld. But yeah, no, my mind was going straight there as well. So the Seasteading Institute is set up by, is it Patrick Friedman, the great the grandson or something of Milton Friedman. And he's full on working towards that. And they've tried to, with the French Polynesia government and Panama government, they're trying to get permission to use the local country somewhat as a port, right? Or for deliveries or passageway through. But they are trying to establish these legal jurisdictions out in international waters. And I agree. I'm there. The bigger the zombie apocalypse gets, the bigger that amplitude of the wave of civil war and hyperinflation and all these things that might happen. Then yes, the final frontier ends up being the ocean. There's more ocean than terror than Earth on planet Earth.
Well, I like the idea in the Sovereign Individual too, where he talks about, jurisdictions becoming kind of entrepreneurial about their tax codes and what they offer. And, his big thing is, well, it needs to be this way. We forget that we're the customers of our governments, right? We're the customers of your, they don't own us. We put them in power. We pay for their services, right? And it's not approached that way. Or of course we demand a much higher level of efficiency and a much better return on our investment.
I gave up my optimism for the majority of mankind being able to come to that realization a number of years ago. I don't think people don't understand that we get to decide, or we should get to decide. Otherwise, there'd be a march on every government capital today. We're so much learned helplessness that we are effectively mentally we are slaves to the system. I do think, and this is a point that Martin Armstrong makes, he says that civilizations change not just because of a debasement in the currency, because that can get kicked down the road near indefinitely. But he says that it happens when there's a loss in confidence in government, and that's probably when the civil war type stuff kicks off in full force. Is that loss in confidence of government? So I don't have faith that people can be smart enough to realize to guide their governments into a better state. I do think that people will allow things to get so bad that they literally just lose faith, and then things collapse. And that's where you can have something new come to fruition. We have to be there with the blockchain solutions and things like what you're doing with the UX network to actually make that transition so much easier. Speaking of which, a few practical updates maybe of what UX network is working on, or practical projects that you see developing that you're hopeful about.
Yeah. So, I know that our automated market maker, the product that Origins had in development for a while, is supposed to be, kind of an any day scenario. I don't speak for them. This is just, from my relationships with those guys. And I imagine the markets this week slowed that a little, because I know they're very heavy savvy, right? They're professional investors in their background. So, in volatile markets, it's difficult to get a hold of my friend Darren. He's usually like, just give me a couple days. I can't deal with anything. I have to stay on this because they trade it in a certain way that I don't even understand. It's above my pay grade, so to speak. But really that's kind of an important cog, a keystone, if you will, that's going to start the liquidity for the UX token, and also I believe join it with probably at least 3 other chains that are currently in our alliance there of EOS, Wax, Telos, and UX. I don't know that for sure, but I know it'll be multi-currency. And I know that product has a lot of other capability, which should get revealed in time, is my understanding. It's a little more sophisticated than just an automated market maker. So that's interesting. I've been working on a project with a couple of people to see what we can do with some NFTs. So I'm not going to say too much about that yet. But I don't know. What do you think, Waxa?
Sorry, I was just editing.
Yeah, Wax is helping out. He's part of that with me, our exploratory group. What do you think?
Without giving the game away, Waxer, just in case you missed that bit, but what are your thoughts on the NFT project that Domenic just referred to, without giving away exactly what it's all about? But
just what do I think about it?
Your general thoughts, yeah.
Yeah, it's something that UX needs, and with the technology that UX are bringing out, something that EOSIO can really benefit from. And it's one of those circumstances where there are other NFT marketplaces, other NFT use cases within not only our ecosystem, but the broader crypto market. And it's something that we're developing which will help stand out amongst this highly competitive environment. So I'm really looking forward to the way this develops. We're starting off in a sensible manner from the ground up, building the foundations, and then developing it over time. And yeah, keep an eye out for it. We'll be starting a proper marketing campaign in the not so distant future. And yeah, I'll make sure that to share with everyone in our communities. Yeah. Anything you would add to that, Dominic? Because that was quite big. You know.
I think I think some of the concrete elements are, we want to start creating use cases for the bridge, right? That's the big product that also launches concurrently with the AM, is my understanding, because they require one. The AM requires the bridge. So we want to be able to show that off, and there's ways to do that with NFTs. There's also ways to, once we get some sort of NFT infrastructure, if you will, going on UX, we can help out Wax a little bit acutely with their resource challenges until they're able to kind of, my understanding is they're very much, of course, as you can imagine, in process of fixing, the resource challenges they're having. Because it's just a shame, right? I mean, Wax has said, I hadn't been following it that closely, but when someone told me it was like 12 million accounts or something. Did I get that right? I mean, I think am I close?
Something extremely large,
right? I mean, you had a blockchain with 12 million accounts, and it should be worth, way more than most of these chains out there. And it isn't, because the economic models, combined with some, I think, technical issues, has really just ground it to a halt, and it's being used very inefficiently. So, hopefully that'll change, but we have a solution, solutions that will roll out over time that we think will help the existing projects to do things like airdrops and then take them back across, right? That's where the bridge can be very helpful. So they could come over, use UX and use resources there, but then, send the NFTs back across the bridge to their users, their communities. So, that's something. And we want to, I think we can say, Waxa, that we have a very primary focus on usability.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely think this is going to be the type of app, once we get the sort of full MVP out, that you're going to be able to just send to anybody you know. Because we have a few tricks up our sleeve as to options for basically a non-blockchain kind of account, or it'll feel that way. Still obviously interact with the blockchain, but we think we can obscure all of it, frankly, so that it'll feel very Web 2.
Exactly, because blockchain back-end technology, we really want to have this intuitive design where you don't necessarily need to have your keys at hand to do transfers, etc., etc. Everything will be nice and simple. Web 2 interface using Web 3 technology.
Yep.
Should help with onboarding and just general user-friendly environment.
Wax is 20,000 accounts away from 13 million.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so I wasn't crazy.
But I don't know how many of those are unique individuals. That's the one thing we always have to, because they do have a free wallet.
Sure, no doubt. But and I know that there's been I've been participating in it in a pretty good group of UX folks. The Blue Ocean guys. They're a team that's pretty quiet, pretty low key on UX, but they've been doing a kind of a yield protocol. We've been helping them test their smart contracts, make sure everything's cool. But you're staking, and they have some actual value creation on mechanism on the back end that they've had in development for a long time. So that's pretty interesting. And then of course we had EOS USA join us as a new block producer. You guys probably pushed that through your channels, but I don't know if I think that was post last week's live stream, was earlier this week or near the end of last week. But so that's we're seeing that interest build. And there's just different conversations going on around some other teams like that. So what I'm most excited about is finally seeing the chains come together and start to work together in a very authentic manner, right? Building value together. And it won't happen overnight, but I think once we get a few important wins, it'll really open up. And I think people will really start thinking collaboratively from the jump. Like, I'm going to build my app, and it's going to involve NFTs. So I'm probably going to have smart contracts on Wax, and I really want to use that that bridge on UX. So I'm going to be there, and then Mainnet's got this companion app that I'm strategic partners with. It's that sort of thing, right? And Telos is running this over here, and we'll see like actual cross-chain applications within our ecosystem, but then eventually across the industry.
It's almost like each blockchain is resemblance of a component within a computer system or a database, and you can call from each one to build something unique and powerful. I am also amazed by, I think it's long overdue, the coalition. And I think there's not many other blockchain communities, layer one communities, working like this. I don't know if there's any others working in Symmetry for co-development. So it should provide some unique opportunities in the not so distant future. Looking forward to it.
I agree. And this crash, as difficult as it was for the industry, and any of us who genuinely care about the technology in the industry as a whole and want to see it healthy, that sucked, but it was positive from my perspective and most everyone I've talked to, because EOS hasn't been a moon coin, as we all are well aware, and so sure, we took a hit with the broader market, but it wasn't anywhere near the same magnitude, and we seem to be relatively steady. And same for UX, right? UX is such a built solidly from the ground up project, that's been origins. That's just Darren and Guillaume's mindsets. I know that's how they think. I've known these guys for almost 5 years now, and everything's about quality. Everything's about interoperability. Everything's about stability. Everything's about security. And you get QED, collateralized oracles, right? It's like, not only do we have great oracles that haven't failed to date and have been running on Wax for over 4 years and other places in the EOS ecosystem, but we are going to add collateral to them as well. Because if they ever do fail, we can't have situations like, the hacks that have happened on the Ethereum or the Ethereum-like chains. So I just, that mentality, and I think a lot of EOS has tried to be that way. I mean, again, Wax has a very valid use case, right? Like, once they can get things fixed, I think what'll emerge is one of the first chains that's truly demonstrating utility value. And I've said this a lot, like, we don't really know what the utility value of a utility token is yet, because I don't think anybody's achieved any type of sizable enough utility with their utility tokens, with their chain. There hasn't been organic demand, right? As businesses who need the resources, right? It's all been speculators and Ponzi's and flipsies and onesies and whatever else. I mean, I don't know, shit piled on shit. So I think we're well positioned for that, you know, over here right now and over the long term. So I hope that plays out. I mean, a good conversation with David Packham from Chintai last night. He's over in Singapore, and he was my first Wordly believer. So I always have a very warm place in my heart for David. He kind of was already a big shot in the EOS world when I came stumbling along. He had you guys remember the EOS London meetups?
Yeah.
Ah, man, those were like, I remember the first one I went to, flew across the pond. I thought I was so killer, man. I felt like such a stud, like talking to this room for like 300 people at the WeWork and, you know, like dressing up, and everybody was there. Everybody was really excited, you know. I think I met Eve there, you know, so many people, but, and then of course the EOS New York meetups, but, you know, Chintai has a lot happening too. But again, just another example of someone very solid, you know, on the verge of getting some of the first licenses that a crypto company's ever had. That's going to enable them to do legitimate but innovative finance and financial products. So I hope everything's going as well as I think it is. I don't know about you guys, but I'm very optimistic about our space right now.
Hopefully, yeah. Absolutely.
Things are coming. So we just got to create enough noise to let people look in our direction. I think we should turn into dickheads.
There you go. The Do Kwon strategy. We all start mouthing off on Twitter. You suck. Vitalik, you're an asshole. Why? Just cause I need likes.
You want to fight?
Oh, speaking of though, you know, when you guys at Helios, you know, you have a fair amount of marketing chops. I've been looking into some of these things. I'm just always curious as well, but you know, it looks like there's some pretty advanced technology in terms of Twitter bots that can actually get you like authentic, like interested followers, right? They can actually help mine people that would fit your customer profile of who you would want following you and the real users, right? Not just, you know, a bunch of zombie accounts.
There are a few issues using bots, and that the algorithm from Twitter is quite clever. Keeps getting updated all the time. So you depend on the bot you have, you're fighting against the latest update.
Sure.
And it's a back and forth. But if you get it wrong, your account could get deleted.
Oof.
So it's high risk.
I was talking about third parties, you know, that do this. You know, that's their line of business. I was reading about a couple of them. They looked pretty good. So
same thing though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if my shit account with 1,000 followers gets banned, I don't think it's the end of the world.
That's what we're looking at.
Speaking of though, that's something I would love to see revisited for EOS social media. You know, I mean, we all know the woeful tale of voice, but that shouldn't deter anybody. That was just a horrifyingly badly executed project, you know. But I think EOS Tech again positions itself extremely well for a strong, you know, Web3 social media platform. And you know, when are we going to start addressing this data, you know, asymmetry, right? Like when are people going to start getting paid for their contributions properly? You know, I have this whole essay about how, you know, to me, data is to the information age what oil was to the industrial age. And it will be that type of straight commodity. I mean, it already is. There's a huge gray market, as I'm sure you guys are aware. But, you know, I see data literally, you know, something that's going to get traded, you know, in markets, you know, straight up. And there'll be different sort of values, you know, they'll be grouped differently, right? Like personal data versus, say, economic data or weather data, right? Like you'll have different valuations, different prices of like commodities, you know, much like oil again, you know. But I'd like to see a Web3, you know, that could be a big mover for us. And I have some ideas about trying to crush LinkedIn because I think LinkedIn is just obnoxious and so badly done at this point. All I get is I check it like every 3 months, and all I have is a bunch of shit solicitations. Like I'm getting like $30,000 a year sales job offers, and I'm not, whatever. That's great, but I mean, nothing on my profile suggests that I want a $30,000 an hour sales or $30,000 annual sales job, like, or a sales job of any kind.
You have to have a half a dozen of them at once.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, but I think my profile certainly doesn't say entry level. But these things could be huge, and I think that would be a critical part of this new type of union. I've chewed his ear off about this for a while. It's the next thing I want to do. When I try to make a run at it finally, of just, why wouldn't the union be its own HR agency? Why wouldn't the union be its own social network, right? And be able to harvest that information and sell it on behalf of the individuals in the membership. It can be done. The tools and the technology now have made so much of this which would have been way out of reach. You would have needed incredibly expensive, software and computer, hardware and systems in order to mine that information and sort of say manually, if you will, although it's clearly automated with a computer. But now with things like blockchains or the various software that's out there, even some of the off-the-shelf social media software is pretty amazing at this point, and comes with all the data analytics and all those things, built in. So I really want to see somebody do something with data. I feel that could be a big win for everyone globally.
Yeah.
Right.
I think if you combine it with identity, online identity, you choose what information you put online.
Yeah.
And then when you go to a website, you choose what information you give them and what they can sell. And then it could be a good revenue income for the user of a certain platform who's happy to sell certain information about themselves or what they have. So start with the identity on chain.
Yeah. And we have it as KYC, and I think you'll like Darren's ideas, and Guillaume, you should ask them off the record at some point about identity and what they have planned. It's pretty special. But in that, I came across this. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but Decentralized Society: Finding Web3 Soul. It's a paper by Vitalik. He's one of the co-authors, and then Pooja Oliver, I think you pronounce that, and then E. Glenn Wheel. But it's a pretty thick, research paper, basically, or about that, and talking about how identity, and they have this idea of soul, and you'd have different souls, and so it would be like reputation as well. And so let's say you go, you build this up, and you build up the social capital, and you go and get a loan, and you default, that soul tokens get burned. And so it's like you got to start over. Like that's your penalty. So now you have no credit again, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Right? There'd be ways to do this. And again, Origin made an announcement about that at one point. They have a social capital model that they're deploying for Clout.art. Have you guys ever heard of that project?
So,
no.
So there's some interesting models around that idea, and Origin and an essay on Medium of social capital as an asset class. I highly recommend if you're a Medium reader. That's a quicker read than this 40-page thing, which yes, I printed out because I like to print things out and write on them, and I enjoy holding things in my hands sometimes. So
old school, showing your age.
More likely to read it. Yep. What's up with Helios? I don't think we've talked about Helios much. What are you guys doing?
I'm doing wave 3 of the incubator, which is version 2 of the Incubator Lite program, which Gabriel's developed. And that's going well.
So that sounds really, really good. Well, actually, you got a little in on that. We may have to try to jump in that with our little project, see if we can submit an application.
Good idea. You've got to apply via the website and speak to Gabriel.
Nice.
And the rest of the team will review the project. So yeah,
see if I have the
Good
right
idea.
stuff.
Mhm.
Or we.
If it's got the potential of making millions of dollars for contributors and helps to build the EOSIO ecosystem, then you're a shoe in.
Oof. All right. Well, you should take a look, but encourage everybody to do that. You know, that's the other thing that has me optimistic. You know, Pomelo, right? Eden, you know, Helios, right? There's so many more opportunities than there were or ever have been that I can recall to access some capital to get something built. I mean, David and I were talking about this last night as well. This whole idea of like, you know, just imagine if Block One had deployed $1 million for 1,000 projects and spent just that 1 billion that they promised, you know, with any type of hell, they could have thrown darts, you know, they could have taken the first 1,000 most likely and just said yes and still had, you know, a substantial number of winners and probably at least a unicorn or two. And what would that have meant, right? You know, what was our war chest? I mean, he was saying, I don't really remember, but it makes sense. He's like, you know, Ethereum had something like 40 million or so. You know, that was like consensus war chest at the time that they were deploying for various things. He's like, you know, I remember thinking that was so laughable. We had 4 billion, you know, it was like 1,000 times more than them, you know, or yeah, I think it's 3 zeros from there anyway, 100 times at least. You know, this is we're done. You know, we're gonna, you know, we're gonna take this whole thing over. But we sort of know how that turned out. But you know, we may not have that amount, but we are funding a lot of different things, and I hope we'll see more entrepreneurship, right? Because ENF is doing direct grants too, and that's supposed to be kind of for profit, correct?
Can be, yeah.
Right. Can you do that with Pomelo?
No.
You're not allowed to do that with Pomelo, right? I thought so.
It's public good, so
yeah,
tough to have a for-profit public good, but possible, I suppose.
What I have, I guess, rounding up the time because I think we're getting towards the end of our scheduled time. But what I've noticed, Dominic, with the incubator is that a lot of projects will apply for investment without the perspective of needing to be more than just a grant application, and grants are often given away for free, right? It's free money, and so there's that attitude, and I kind of get the sense, or I've gotten the sense in the EOS community itself, how the apps have developed, that there wasn't necessarily a tremendous focus on entrepreneurship, which is the word that you just used. It was more a case of, well, public goods, open source, let's build infrastructure, which is all good, but it does need that extra layer of what I call commercial viability or entrepreneurship, with that kind of a focus. And so I think through the incubator program, we are seeing that projects will refocus their attention on actually making money, not just on doing something that seems cool or exciting or innovative or whatever. And then hopefully that is going to stimulate more of a commercial ecosystem, and then we can bring in more external capital. We will bring in more applications that can be used as showcases, as demonstrations for what EOSIO protocol projects can achieve in the wider world, and then that will help to bring in the retail crypto investors as well. So I do agree, and I do think that entrepreneurship piece of the puzzle has been missing, to at least to some extent, and I think that's really what Helios is aiming to contribute and develop, or at least help to stimulate within the EOSIO community.
Yeah.
And for projects wanting to build on, so who aren't currently part of the ecosystem but are wanting to build,
crossover, right?
Yeah, especially with
down,
the
we'll help you get some tokens so you can run your stuff. Yeah, I think that's great, and I know that UX. I should have mentioned that we were working on a worker proposal system too, but maybe we'll talk more about that later. But that'll be the beginning of something like that, and our vision of it is use it for whatever. You know, if you're a for-profit, you know, application, that's fine with us. You know, the way we see it, the tokens are there to invest in the system, you know, and hopefully get a wide array of things, from public goods to, viable businesses to, products and services of any kind. So, we need more of that. I've also thought forever that we should do a regulated crowdfunding platform, because that moved up to 5 million in the US. That's substantial now, right? It used to be just 1.1, I believe, or 1.2 million. And they raised those, I think 2 years ago or last year. So that could work. And that's not a very hard license to get, right? You don't need to be like bank ready. You kind of just have to have a compliant app. Like you can't apply for it until your software's live or get ready to be live, because that's the most important part apparently of the application. But that's cool. Just means they want to see that what you built follows the rules. So that's pretty neat. I think that would kill though, because it'd be great to be able to actually crowdfund and see some apps raise some capital that way.
Yeah, like a persistent GoFundMe, kind of something similar to the Telos worker proposal. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Good things
right, so coming. Oh, sorry, Chris. Go.
No, I was just saying good things coming.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I agree.
So an hour and a half we've been going. Well, just under. So we'll call it a day for now. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. We've got plenty of videos coming out almost most days of the week. And on Sunday, we have our top 5 coming out. So look forward to seeing you again next week. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Domenic, for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it.
And everybody be mean, right? Right, Chris?
Yeah.
Be mean. Troll me on Twitter.
Our new shit. You guys are all idiots. EOS is the best. Don't look at the price. Still, just ignore the price. But we're still the best.
We hate you.